felony criminal case that has drawn national attention, the People versus Donald Trump. This case was tried in New York and resulted in multiple felony convictions. Let's dive into the legal, procedural, and constitutional aspects of this landmark prosecution. On this slide, I'm outlining the 4 major criminal indictments filed against Donald J. Trump in 2023, 2 at the state level and 2 at the federal level. First, in New York, Trump was charged in March with 34 felony counts of falsifying business records, stemming from alleged hush money payments made during the 2016 presidential campaign. Prosecutors argued these payments were falsely recorded to conceal damaging information from voters. Next, in Georgia, he was indicted in August on 13 counts under the state's RICO statute, a law typically used to prosecute organized crime. These charges relate to alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election results through a coordinated pressure campaign targeting state officials. Moving to the federal level, in Florida, Trump faced 40 counts in June for mishandling classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago estate. The indictment included charges for unlawful retention, obstruction, and false statements. Finally, in Washington, D.C., he was indicted in August on 4 federal counts tied to his alleged role in attempting to overturn the 2020 election and inciting the January 6th Capitol insurrection. These charges focus on conspiracy to defraud the United States and obstruction of an official proceeding. Together, these cases represent an unprecedented legal moment in U.S. history, where a sitting or former president faces simultaneous state and federal felony indictments. The Manhattan Criminal Court, located at 100 Center Street, has long stood as a symbol of New York's commitment to prosecuting complex and high-profile criminal cases. Established in the early 20th century in 1941, this courthouse has handled everything from organized crime to white-collar fraud, and now one of the most historic prosecutions in American legal history. In March 2023, Donald J. Trump was indicted by Manhattan grand jury on those 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. The case officially opened in April 2024, with jury selection and pretrial motions overseen by Judge Juan Mercan, a veteran of financial and political crime cases. The trial spanned 6 weeks, concluding in May 2024, where he was guilty of all counts. This courtroom became the epicenter of national debate over accountability, campaign finance, and the rule of law. This slide sets the stage for the courtroom actors in this case. Judge Mercan, District Attorney Alvin Bragg Jr., Lead Defense Attorney Todd Blanche, and pivotal witnesses like Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels. Their roles shaped the trajectory of the case and its broader implications for legal precedent and political transparency. Judge Juan Mercan is the central judicial figure in the People versus Donald J. Trump. Born in Bogota, Colombia, he immigrated to New York at age 6 and grew up in Jackson Heights, Queens. His journey from immigrant to jurist is a powerful testament to public service and legal integrity. Mercan earned his business degree from Baruch College and his law degree from Hofstra University. He was appointed to the New York Supreme Court in 2009 and has since built a reputation for fairness, discipline, and deep command of financial crime cases. In Trump's trial, Judge Mercan presided over every phase, from pretrial motions to jury instructions. He managed a courtroom under intense national scrutiny, balancing constitutional protections with procedural rigor. His ruling shaped the admissibility of key evidence, including testimony from Michael Cohen and financial records tied to the alleged hush money scheme. This was not Mercan's first encounter with Trump's orbit. He previously oversaw the Trump Organization tax fraud case and sentenced CFO Alan Weisselberg. His experience with complex white-collar cases made him uniquely suited to handle the legal and political weight of this trial. As we move into the roles of the prosecution and defense, keep in mind how Judge Mercan's decisions frame the legal boundaries of this historic case. Alvin Bragg Jr. is the 37th District Attorney of New York County and the first African American elected to that office. A lifelong Manhattanite, Bragg earned both his undergraduate and law degrees from Harvard University and has served as Chief Deputy Attorney General of New York and as the federal prosecutor in the Southern District. Bragg's leadership is defined by his commitment to justice, not just in prosecution, but in post-conviction review. One of his most significant reforms was the creation of the Post-Conviction Justice Unit, a groundbreaking initiative that re-examines closed cases to ensure that convictions still meet the standards of fairness and legal integrity. This unit doesn't just look for wrongful convictions. It investigates whether there's still confidence in the outcome, even years after sentencing. The unit operates on 3 pillars: independent reinvestigation, support for exonerees and victims, and systemic reform through training and root cause analysis. Bragg's approach reflects a deep understanding that justice is not static. It must continuously be audited, especially in a system historically prone to error and inequity. In the People versus Donald J. Trump, Bragg demonstrated that same astuteness. His office pursued the case with precision, balancing public accountability with procedural rigor. From indictment to trial, Bragg's team maintained clear focus on the integrity of the judicial process, reinforcing that no individual is above the law. As we move into the roles of the defense and key witnesses, Bragg's prosecutorial philosophy offers a powerful lens through which to understand the stakes of this historic case. Todd Blanche served as the lead defense attorney for Donald J. Trump. People versus Donald J. Trump. A former federal prosecutor with nearly a decade of experience in the Southern District of New York, Blanche built his reputation handling complex white-collar cases, including financial fraud and public corruption. Before joining Trump's legal team, Blanche was a partner at Cadwallader, Wickersham, and Taft, one of the oldest law firms in the country. He left that prestigious post in April 2023 to represent Trump specifically. This signals both loyalty and strategic commitment to the defense. In court, Blanche's approach was assertive and calculated. He challenged the credibility of key witnesses like Michael Cohen and questioned the political motivations behind the prosecution. His cross-examinations focused on undermining intent and reframing the payments as personal rather than campaign-related. Blanche also filed multiple motions to dismiss, arguing that the charges themselves were legally insufficient and constitutionally flawed, most likely the Sixth Amendment. Though those motions were denied, they laid the groundwork and foundation for potential appellate arguments. In courtroom, his demeanor was measured but firm, often pushing back against evidentiary rulings while maintaining composure under intense media scrutiny. Blanche's leadership shaped the defense narrative and positioned Trump's legal team for ongoing appeals. As we move into the witness testimony and trial dynamics, Blanche's role offers insight on how high-pressure defense strategies are crafted under pressure. Before introducing the witnesses, we must bring up Donald J. Trump, the 45th and current 47th President of the United States. He is the central figure in this criminal case. Known globally for business empires, media presence, and political influence, Trump's legal exposure in The People versus Donald J. Trump marks a historic moment in American jurisprudence. The charges in this case stem from alleged efforts to conceal payments made during the 2016 presidential campaign, specifically 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. Prosecutors argue that Trump's orchestrated a scheme to suppress damaging information and misinterpreted reimbursements as legal expenses. Trump's defense maintained that the payments were lawful and unrelated to campaign finance violations. His legal team, led by Mr. Blanche, framed the case as politically motivated and constitutionally flawed. Throughout the trial, Trump's status as a sitting president added layers of complexity, from jury selection to courtroom security. His presence in court was both symbolic and procedural, highlighting the principle that no individual is above the law. This case is not just about one man. It's about the integrity of the electoral process, the boundaries of executive power, and the accountability mechanisms embedded in our legal system. As we move into the witnesses and trial dynamics, Trump's role as both defendant, public figure, and president remains central to understanding the stakes of this prosecution. The prosecution in this felony case called 20 witnesses, while defense just called 2. These testimonies were central to establishing intent, concealment, and the mechanics of the alleged falsification scheme. Let's begin with Michael Cohen, Trump's former personal attorney and fixer. His testimony was the backbone of the prosecution's case. Cohen described how he arranged payments to adult film actress Stormy Daniels and was later reimbursed through falsified business records labeled as legal fees. His credibility was challenged due to his criminal history, but his insider knowledge was unmatched. Next, Stormy Daniels herself took the stand. She testified about her alleged affair with Trump and the pressure she felt to accept the hush money payment. Her account added emotional weight, media sensation, and context to the financial trial. While there are other witnesses, together, these 2 specific painted a detailed picture of coordination, concealment, and intent, critical elements in proving the felony charges. Their testimony did not just fill in facts. It shaped the jury's understanding of motive and accountability. In the People versus Donald J. Trump, no plea deal was offered nor accepted. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office, led by Alvin Bragg Jr., pursued a full prosecution. They cited the seriousness of the charges and the public's right to transparency in a case involving electoral integrity. From the defense side, Trump's legal team made it clear early on that it would not to concede, especially given the political and reputational stakes. Strategically, both sides had reasons to proceed for trial. For the prosecution, a conviction through trial would reinforce the legitimacy of the charges and demonstrate that even high-profile defendants are subject to the rule of law. For the defense, going to trial allowed them to challenge the credibility of witnesses like Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels, arguing that the case was politically motivated. Ultimately, the decision to forego a plea deal reflected the gravity of the allegations and the broader implications for legal precedent and democratic accountability. In this case, the named victim is not an individual, it's the people of the state of New York. That designation reflects the broader harm alleged by prosecutors, a deliberate attempt to deceive voters and manipulate the democratic process through falsified business records. These charges centered on payments made to suppress damaging information during an election. By misclassifying those payments as legal expenses, prosecutors argued that Trump concealed critical facts from the public, undermining electoral transparency and violating campaign finance laws. This framing positioned the people of New York as the injured party. It is not just about accounting fraud. It is about the integrity of public institutions and the right of voters to make informed decisions. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office emphasized that when powerful individuals distort records to protect their image or political ambitions, it erodes trust in the rule of law. In this sense, the courtroom became a venue not just for legal accountability, but for civic restoration and a moral imperative. The conviction signaled that even symbolic harm to the public can warrant criminal prosecution when it involves deception, concealment, and abuse of power. In The People versus Donald Trump, the jury process was one of the most scrutinized phases of the trial. As a criminal defense paralegal, I am deeply familiar with how extensive and critical this step is, not just for fairness, but for shaping the entire trajectory of a case. Jury selection began April 2024 and lasted several days, involving rigorous voir dire to screen for bias, media influence, and political leanings. Given Trump's public profile, the court faced unique challenges in assembling an impartial jury. Potential jurors were questioned about their social media activity, news consumption, and prior opinions about the defendant. Ultimately, 12 jurors and 6 alternates were seated. Their anonymity was protected, and Judge Mergang issued strict instructions to preserve the integrity of deliberations. Pretrial motions were equally pivotal. The defense filed multiple motions to dismiss, arguing that the charges were legally insufficient and politically motivated. The prosecution responded with detailed filings defending the indictment structure and evidentiary foundation. Judge Mergang ruled on motions involving admissibility of Michael Cohen's testimony, use of financial records and internal Trump organization documents, scope of cross-examination for key witnesses. These rulings shaped what the jury could hear and see, making this phase not just procedural, but strategic. In high-profile cases like this, jury selection and pretrial motions aren't just formalities. They're battlegrounds for narrative control and constitutional balance. And on May 30th, 2024, the jury returned a unanimous verdict: guilty on all 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree. This moment marked a historic legal milestone. The first time a sitting or former president was convicted of felony crimes in a state court. The verdict followed weeks of testimony, cross-examination, and evidentiary review. It reflected the jury's conclusion that the prosecution had proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt, establishing intent to defraud and conceal. As a criminal defense paralegal, I recognize the weight of this outcome, not just for the defendant, but for the legal system itself. It reinforces that accountability applies at every level, regardless of status or power. And it also impedes and questions whether these same tactics can be used by others in the future. Following his conviction on 34 counts of falsifying business records, Donald Trump was sentenced to an unconditional discharge, a rare outcome for felony cases. This means the court imposed no jail time, no probation, and no monetary fine, though the conviction remains on record. The charges were classified as Class E felonies, which represent the lowest tier of felony offenses under New York law. While it's still serious, Class E felonies often result in non-custodial sentences, especially for first-time offenders or cases involving nonviolent conduct. As someone with extensive experience in criminal defense, I recognize how sentencing reflects both statutory guidelines and judicial direction. Judge Juan Mercan's decision balanced the legal weight of the conviction with broader considerations, including the defendant's public status and the nature of the offense. Altogether, this outcome reinforces that a felony conviction can carry reputational legal consequences, even without incarceration. Following the guilty verdict, Donald Trump's legal team immediately filed a notice of appeal, formally initiating the appellate process. This filing preserved his right to challenge the conviction and triggered review by the Appellate Division, First Department, which oversees appeals from trial courts in Manhattan and the Bronx. The appellate court will not retry a case or hear new evidence. Instead, it will examine the trial record for legal or procedural errors, which may include rulings on evidence, jury instruction, and potential judicial bias. Trump's attorneys have already signaled that their appeal will focus on the admissibility of key testimony, the structure of the indictment, and constitutional concerns. The Appellate Division, on the other hand, will review written briefs from both sides, may hear oral arguments, and will ultimately issue a written opinion. Depending on the outcome, the case could be affirmed, reversed, or remanded for further proceedings. This phase is critical, not just for Trump's legal future, but for the broader precedent it may set regarding the prosecution of high-ranking public officials. The sentence imposed in the People v. Donald J. Trump, an unconditional discharge with no fine or incarceration, has sparked intense debate across legal and public spheres. Critics argue that the outcome was too lenient, pointing to the gravity of the offense. 34 felony convictions tied to election-related deception. They contend that a non-custodial sentence undermines deterrence and sends a troubling message on accountability for powerful individuals. On the other hand, supporters of the decision view it as an exercise in judicial restraint. Judge Juan Mergang applied New York sentencing guidelines for Class E felonies, which often result in probation or discharge for first-time, non-violent offenders. They argue that the conviction itself carries significant weight, both legally and symbolically, and that the court avoided politicizing the sentencing phase. This tension between public expectation and procedural consistency is central to modern sentencing debates. In this case, in particular, the court prioritized legal precedent over political optics, reinforcing the principle that justice must be impartial, even when the defendant is a sitting president. Altogether, the sentence invites reflection on how we define fairness, deterrence, and the role of courts in preserving democratic norms. As we conclude this presentation, it's important to recognize that this case is not an isolated legal moment. It's part of a broader landscape of accountability, retaliation, and precedent. Consider the recent indictments of James Comey, former FBI director, and Letitia James, New York Attorney General. These two figures played pivotal roles in investigating or prosecuting Trump, and now both face federal charges initiated by prosecutors closely aligned with him. Comey is accused of lying about authorizing media leaks during his tenure, while James faces allegations of mortgage fraud, charges that many legal analysts have described as weak or politically motivated. These cases raise urgent questions about the weaponization of the justice system and the fragility of prosecutorial independence. So I invite the listener to reflect. How does Trump's conviction shape the legal terrain for these cases? Does it reinforce the rule of law or deepen the perception of political retaliation? And finally, what does it mean for future prosecutors, defense attorneys, and public officials navigating high-stakes legal battles in a polarized climate like this? I understand these answers aren't simple, but the questions are essential. Because justice, at its core, demands not just verdicts, but vigilance. In other words, justice needs not only to be done, but it needs to be seen to be done justly.